What's the worst case of rich kid syndrome you've seen? One of my college classmates wrecked his Range Rover over winter break and came back in an Aston Martin. In middle school, we were asked to draw our homes for some assignment and hand it in at the end of class. A popular, extremely wealthy kid that sat behind me raised his hand and smugly asked the teacher for another sheet of paper because he couldn't draw it all on one page. His friends just snickered, but I was cringing. Even at 12, I remember thinking it was such a snobby thing to say. Went to school with a crazy rich kid, his parents divorced, and each decided to buy his love. Mommy owned a real estate agency, so she got him a license and spoon-fed him enough sales for a six-figure income. The dad then bought him a magazine. Yes, the dad bought a magazine for his 24-year-old cokehead son to run. Worked about as well as you'd imagine. My fiance's cousin. He managed to crash 4 cars while still in high school because his father would replace them. When he moved on to college, he got kicked out of several apartments for owning a dog when they weren't permitted. He told me he didn't care though, since his father also funded his continuous stream of new housing. From what I last heard, his father is now paying for his long-standing cocaine habit. Someone's sister got $600 shoes, so the parents got the other kid shoes of the same price to stop their complaining. Edit. It was a birthday present for the first kid. I should have said that. My friend literally throws away his change because he hates holding coins. Doesn't matter if it's 99 cents, he'll throw it away. That shit adds up. My fraternity brother's monthly allowance of $2,000 was cancelled from his parents because he made a few F's. He then called his aunt for a separate allowance. The Nintendo DS just came out. It was like $150, and my family lived in a cramped one-bedroom apartment and drove a 20-year-old car that was always breaking down. We ate those cheap bags of Walmart beans and rice for months at one point. I expressed a desire to own one after my friend said he had one, and I got, "Why can't your parents just buy you one? I don't get it, it's dirt cheap." He didn't want to be my friend after that anymore, literally avoided me and made fun of me for the rest of the year behind my back. I'm still salty about it. Maybe not rich kid syndrome, but middle-class kid syndrome. I work for a dentist and her son is a spoiled brat. He was at the office one day because she had to bring him to an appointment later that day. He got bored and went out wandering around some of the local shops. He came back a little while later and without any preamble walked up to her and said, "Give me $80. She asked him what it was for, and he just repeated himself and she gave it to him. Knew this one guy at my college who didn't understand why everybody is so worked up about student loans. I remember him saying something along the lines of, "Why don't people just pay the tuition up front?" He was also quite sheltered. So my best friend's wife teaches at a ritzy $40K per year private school. As in, $40,000 a year for elementary and middle school. I think the HS is like $50K plus. Well, she teaches 7th or 8th grade, I can't remember, and she said she always goes around the class after the summer break and asks them what they did over the summer, and she particularly remembers one kid complaining about how much his summer sucked because he was stuck on his parents' yacht all summer and they didn't even take it to anywhere cool, just Italy. Young celebrity posts a pic of a house they just bought. That house isn't that nice, my cousin's house is way nicer. This kid back in high school was whining, I mean literally whimpering, that he had to wait something like 6 weeks for his custom-built BMW to come over from Germany. Went to HS with this insufferably spoiled kid. Family had a couch in their home's elevator. And classical European sculpture, this was in the US. Kid talked down to about the less fortunate on a regular basis. Once made fun of me for picking a coin up off the ground. I knew a girl whose allowance was $90 a day. She got into trouble so they cut it to $90 a week. I wouldn't say rich kid but definitely spoiled brat who thought he was rich. Befriended him in 5th grade over our interest in the Yu-Gi-Oh trading card game. First time I hung out at his place I noticed just how littered with stuff his room was. Some even unopened. I showed him some rare card that I had recently pulled from a pack. He got super jealous and angry that I wouldn't trade or sell it to him. He immediately got up and walked over to the family computer and booted up a site where you could buy cards and various other toys and such. Completely ignoring having me over, he's now on an online shopping spree adding stuff to the cart. After adding a few things he yells, "Where's the credit card?" And immediately his older sister comes running up the stairs to yell, "Kyle, mom said no more buying stuff online." And closes the website and shuts off the computer. Kyle then proceeds to have a crying tantrum on the floor, and I'm just standing there over him in shock at what's happening and how he's acting. I slowly stopped hanging out with him until completely avoiding him as his temperament got worse. Kid wasn't even rich either. If I remember correctly, both of his parents were cops. Apparently there was this 15-year-old girl who was going on an exotic vacation to some Pacific island or something. But her favorite show was on TV the day of their flight, and she really wanted to see it. Her parents delayed the flight so that she could watch an episode of her favorite show. That affluenza kid killed someone driving drunk and got no jail time. Rich kid I know brought $1,000 to the book fair in elementary school. Yay, $1,000, that's not a typo. Edit. Geez, this is like my 8th post on AskReddit and is by far my most upvoted one. Thanks guys. Babysat some rich kids. A couple gems where when we were watching a movie and she said someone was ugly because they were poor. Another was that they left their stove at the side of the road for hobos. Kid was about 11. This girl would always brag about how she's been to every continent except Antarctica and that she's visited so many countries. Then she wondered why people called her the rich kid and insisted she wasn't rich. Adrian Broner, a boxer, though he was not born rich but became rich in his 20s, if you are not going by what Felix Dennis considers rich. He was supposed to be the next boxing superstar but was beaten badly and exposed. He put out a video of him in line at Walmart. He paid with a $100 bill and threw the change on the ground, saying he is AB and only deals in 100s. This is a man who had 7 children by 8 women at 23, 6 years ago, and who knows how many now. He had to settle a $1 million jewelry debt earlier this year. Luckily the only rich kids I knew were the most outstandingly well-behaved boys I've ever met. I was a youth leader in a ministry for middle schoolers, and I think the worst it ever got was them being mildly disruptive at times. But these kids had a literal half-sized basketball court in their basement, along with a basement the size of a comfortable 2-bedroom apartment, an arcade, a fully stocked second fridge, don't even get me started on the house itself, and a yard. This place easily would list at least as $1 million home. But they would share with all the kids in the group and never ever look down on anyone for not having money like them. These boys even helped me change a flat tire on my car because they felt it was useful to know how. They literally could probably afford a tow truck and a tire repair all in the same day if it ever happened to them. They were so well grounded that it made me feel like I was the spoiled brat at times. Edit. Looked up the estimate of the house, it was between 1.4–1.9 million, but the next most expensive house I found in the area was listed for 1.4. The average home in this particular town costs between $400 to $500K, so it's still pretty lavish compared to what everyone else around them has. Why don't you just get a pass to Disney and Universal? The people at my school TBH cannot fathom having multiple spiders in their house in a week. In high school a kid was bragging that he got in his 3rd fender bender in his old car, 3 years old, that his parents gave him, but he hated, so his parents were buying him an entirely new, current year car to incentivize him to drive better. This rich bitch in high school got a BMW for her 17th birthday. About a week later she totaled it, and me and a few of my friends wondered what happened considering they're considered pretty safe and reliable. Apparently she wanted a brand new 2000 BMW 3 Series and she got a 1997. One of my friend's friends ended up paying for a night out, food and entertainment. He'd go up before we got the bill and just pay. No matter how much we argued with him and tried to pay him back, wouldn't take it. Nice dude, mad baller rich. In high school a kid made fun of my mother, so I squared up ready to fight him, and he said, "If you lay a finger on me I'll get my father's lawyer to sue your family for everything they've got." Which made me laugh, call him a coward, and I went on with my life. Guy buys $500 headphones from a vending machine cause he lost his old pair. Like, who buys from a fucking tech vending machine impulsively? Worked with this kid who was a good kid but completely disconnected from financial reality for most people. He'd just moved out west from another state and was trying to get on like a normal adult. He went to buy a new car and was shocked that they couldn't just bill his dad for it since they didn't know him. He ordered a bottle of wine at a restaurant and the sommelier said, "Certainly, sir." Then the sommelier whispered, "Just for your knowledge, sir, the bottle is $700. He looked straight at him and asked, "Is that a lot?" The sommelier honestly didn't know how to answer. Good kid, and he got a lot better, but he just didn't know. Once he casually told his mom he needed some help with bills, and she deposited $20,000 into his account. What about Gat Dallas kid who killed those others in a drunken car wreck? Then used the "I'm too rich for consequences" defense? Friend got a theater with an arcade built over their family's 12-car garage. Parents didn't want the 5-year-old sister to be jealous, so they hired an architect to design and built her a fully functioning playhouse with a bathroom, and bedroom. Just a tip of the iceberg with this family though. This is pretty tame, but it's what I got. I used to work as an after-school babysitter for a loaded doctor couple with 2 kids. My job was mainly to pick up the younger kid from school and hang out till his parents got home. He was a good kid, but coddled and immature. He was in 5th or 6th grade at this point. Oftentimes he would not be at his classroom when I came to get him, and the school campus was huge. Different buildings, courtyards, playgrounds, the works. If he wasn't at his classroom, I had to comb the whole campus, and he was rarely in the same place twice. He had a cell phone, but usually ignored its existence except for playing games on it in the car. The school was in the city and I had to park on the street. A couple of times I wound up with parking tickets because, despite having stuffed the meter with enough quarters to presumably result in ample time, the search for my charge would take much longer than anticipated. After a point, I mentioned this to him, calmly asking that he respect my time and stay in a set location so that I don't end up with a $25 ticket again. He looked at me with a good-natured shrug and said, "Well, that's not much. You can afford that. Sonny, your parents paid me $140 a week and I was in college. I know you live in a $1.4 million house and your dad buys you an expensive new toy every Sunday, but with the money they're forking over for your education, someone ought to have taught you the value of a dollar by now." But honestly, he was a nice kid. They moved away and I hope he's doing well. A guy looked at my $2,000 beater car in college and commented that it must have been really cheap and guessed $15,000. A friend of mine inherited a lot of money, enough to buy a house, and he spent it on 2 cars. A Subaru completely modded to Ken Block's version of it and some BMW, both extremely expensive. We asked him a few months later why he didn't buy a house with it because he still lived with his parents. So he told us that he already owned a penthouse, he just didn't want to move yet. I could absolutely survive on my own, my parents just pay for my food and house, but I pay for everything else. If I got a job I could pay for my food and house too. Said at 18, in the middle of a discussion between 2 middle-class peers who were talking about saving money because they had to pay for their own college and living expenses. About 5 minutes prior to this conversation, both peers had ordered the cheap dinner options and declined a shopping trip later that night, while rich girl was talking non-stop about buying the best most expensive souvenirs for her friends. Once tried working a regular person retail job and quit within a couple weeks as it just wasn't right and I didn't like it, read. Had actual responsibilities for the first time. Moved cross-country for an 8-month education course where her parents pay food, rent, and school. They also gave her a debit card which replenishes up to $500 when it hits $50. She still posts Snapchats with captions of that broke person life over pictures of her getting Starbucks every day and insists she could survive on her own. Constantly suggests the most expensive options for meals, activities, etc., and tax on things like we can just split the bill, I know you're saving, but it's just amount at least $50, you'll be fine right? Then gets upset when people can't afford to spend time with her or when someone dares to suggest that she helps cover costs. Friend's GF asked him to ask everyone he knew to rate one of her dad's restaurants 5 stars. It was because it was the specific one where she is working, and that place has plenty of bad reviews. Generally their restaurants have great reviews, and all the bad ones mention their bitchy waitresses. Guess what she works as? One girl from my high school got breast implants for her 18th birthday. Her mom joined her as a mother-daughter bonding activity, followed by the daughter getting a brand new $90,000 Mercedes as a high school graduation gift. Bragging is one of my pet peeves. There's a coworker that constantly brags of how her mom buys her purses, nails, and hair done. The coworker makes decent money, why can't she buy her own and stop mooching bragging? Or just enjoy it without bragging? didn't know that food stamps were a thing. Like, they didn't know the existence of such a system. One girl at my school complained that she couldn't go to her mansion in Hawaii for spring break, so she had to go through the torture of stay at one of her other 5. I come from a low middle-income family. I was friends with someone who received a red envelope, Chinese tradition, with easily over $1,000 inside, and he still complained about not being able to afford X and Y. I'd be lucky to even have a proper meal every day consistently. My friend's parents had a dilemma because they both bought each other new Mercedes for Valentine's Day. When I was a kid, I got bullied a lot by this one kid named Miguel growing up. His family was a lot better off and spoiled him, buying him the latest shoes, starter jackets, video games, etc. He was always showing it off and especially liked to rub it into my face. My parents both worked 2 jobs to try and provide a decent life for me growing up, but money was tight. Most of my clothes I either got from the thrift store or they were hand-me-downs from my older cousins. I remember one day my parents decided to treat me and take me to the Nike outlet and get a pair of brand new sneakers. This was the first pair of shoes I had in a long time that were all mine and never worn by anyone else. I remember being so excited to wear them to school and walked into the classroom with a big smile that day. Miguel takes one look at my shoes and says, "Nice new old shoes. I had a pair of those last year when they were cool." With a few words he completely crushed the happiness high I was riding and brought me down instantly. Casually referencing an African safari trip she went on as a child while stealing a stranger's umbrella in a bar. I once heard a guy say my dad gave me a small loan of $1 million, fucking rich assholes, man. On an episode of The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, there was a member named Taylor. Her husband committed suicide and their lifestyle changed significantly. Her and her young daughter started flying commercial versus private, and her daughter asked her why there were all these other people on their plane. Went on a cruise with a rich friend. Dinner was served as a 3-course menu, and you could order as many different courses as you want. Rich friend would order 2 plates of food per course, eat a single bite or 2, and throw away the rest of the food. My family was extremely poor when I was younger, and even though we are much better financially now, we still refuse to throw away even the smallest leftovers. All those plates of food wasted hurt my heart to see. She got a new, super expensive phone for Christmas, then got a new even more expensive phone for Valentine's Day. Gave the old one to one of her friends. Constantly has super expensive items, and her dad drives her to school every day in his Lamborghini and is picked up in a limo. Super bratty and can't stand it when something doesn't go her way or when she isn't put in charge. When I was in boarding school, one of my co-boarders handed me some mail saying, "Do you notice anything special about this envelope?" When I checked it out, I realized his face was on the stamp. He was royalty edit. I will add another too. Kid from Taiwan also attending same boarding school. My advent calendar had little chocolates, his had a remote control car, Sega Game Gear, etc. etc. Another teenager, 16, arguing on the phone to his grandfather he didn't want a Porsche, he wanted the Ferrari. This seems very mild now. A rich 12-year-old boy and Nick that I knew had his own a half fridge and a poster of a bare-breasted Farrah Fawcett both in his large bedroom. I think that I was envious of him. In middle school, a repairman was working on a broken AC in our class. This kid kept mocking fun of how dirty he looks. The repairman finally had enough of it and requested the kid to come to the principal office with him. Kid started screaming stupid shit like, "How dare you talk back to me? Do you know who my dad is? Don't you dare touch me, you're dirty," etc. At that moment I lost all faith in humanity. In high school, this one girl was talking to her friend and complaining about getting a PS4 for Christmas instead of an Xbox One. The entire time I was thinking I'll take it. Have a teenage cousin who made fun of me because I won't drop 1K on Yeezys.